Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by Snickers. Snickers satisfies. I'm Jamie, that's Heath, that's Dave. We're looking at the quarterback and running back waiver wire options for you. And we'll start with the quarterbacks. And so typically we like to tell you about some of the players to drop, the guys that are on bye. It's very simple. It's week 17. We're just going straight to the guys to add. And these are the streamers you should be considering. Trey Lance, stepping in for an injured potentially. Jimmy Garoppolo, dealing with that thumb injury. If there is no Lamar Jackson, we'll find out if Tyler Huntley clears the COVID-19 protocols. If not, Josh Johnson could be the starter for you if he starts for the Ravens. And then Davis Mills has done a nice job for the Texans. Can you buy into him? Stanford product, going back to Northern California, taking on the 49ers. Let's get into these a little bit more in depth, though. So let's start with Trey Lance. So we told you at the start of the show that there's a chance Jimmy Garoppolo could be out. He has that UCL tear and fracture in his throwing hand. Heath, so Trey Lance, just based on the potential upside, you said that he came out number 8 for you in terms of your projections. Is there anybody of significance you'd be starting over this week if you were to add him and start him?
The one guy that I would say would be Russell Wilson.
Even though he's taking on the Lions?
Even though he's taking on the Lions. I have a hard time trusting him, and he's not a running quarterback anymore. He runs for like 10 yards a game. He might throw the ball 25 times in that game. And the 49ers have an implied total of 28 points this week. If they score 4 touchdowns, I think Lance will probably be responsible for 2 of them. Probably going to have 50 to 60 rushing yards as well.
Dave, what about you? Anybody of significance you're starting Trey Lance over?
I've got Wilson ahead of Lance for now, but I might build up the confidence to put Lance ahead of Russell Wilson. You mentioned that Russ is taking on the Lions, and your first thought is, oh, man, the Lions, that should be easy for him. But the Lions have been tough against opposing quarterbacks, but so have the Texans. And we talked about it earlier on the show, 19 or fewer fantasy points of 6 of the last 7 quarterbacks that they've taken on. I think that he's really at the top of the list, though. All the other quarterbacks that we'll talk about pale in comparison to Trey Lance this week.
Yeah, it's not exactly a great week for streamers, but the Ravens quarterback situation has clearly been very productive for fantasy managers, even without Lamar Jackson. This was 2 weeks ago, week 15 against the Packers. You got 39 fantasy points from Tyler Huntley. Then Josh Johnson, in an emergency situation, steps in place of Tyler Huntley, in place of Lamar Jackson, and he goes for over 20 fantasy points in what was, tough matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. So let's assume Lamar Jackson is out, and we'll take this step by step. So, Dave, if Lamar Jackson's out and Tyler Huntley's out, where's Josh Johnson come out for you?
Josh Johnson is behind Trey Lance, but he's still in that top 15 fantasy quarterback range. The fact that he was able to play so well without necessarily doing a lot running the football last week against Cincinnati, part of it was game script. Obviously, they fell behind. He had to throw, but he got you the numbers, and he did well with them. And I think that he's going to be in a position to be even better this coming week.
And then what about Tyler Huntley, Heath, if there is no Lamar Jackson? Do you go back to him as the same, maybe same vein of just top 15 caliber quarterback?
Yeah, I've got Johnson at 14 right now, and I would guess if we projected Huntley instead of Johnson, it would be close to 14. It'd be different type of projection. It'd be less passing and more running, but he would be in that conversation, still my second favorite behind Lance.
So why Lance over Huntley, even though you've seen Huntley do it already? You've seen Huntley run for basically the same type of numbers, and he's been a better thrower.
I would bet on the 49ers scoring more points than the Ravens against the Rams, and that's going to be the biggest difference, the implied touchdowns.
Okay, so we'll see. Very fair point. But right now I have the same way. I have Lance 13 and Johnson 14. And then Davis Mills not far behind. I mean, look, he's done a nice job. 18 or more fantasy points in 3 straight games. He's making it, as you said yesterday with Believe It or Not, looking like he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Texans in week 1 next year. Maybe he has at least a very good chance with the way that he's performed. Coming off this great game, 22 fantasy points against the Chargers, and now he's taking on a 49ers defense that we know has struggled for the most part against opposing quarterbacks, especially with Mosley not likely to come back to help their secondary. So does Davis Mills, if he can't get Lance and he can't get maybe Johnson or Huntley, does he fall into that streaming category for you?
He's definitely in the streaming category after those guys, but again, those guys are just outside the top 12 or right at the top 12, so he's a little bit behind them for me. There's some separation. There's not a whole lot of difference between Lance and Huntley or Johnson. Mills would be a ways behind them for me.
He doesn't run, and right now no Brandon Cooks as of now. Would definitely be nice if he has Brandon Cooks back, but again, as I said yesterday, give him credit. Taking away his best receiver, tough matchup. I know they didn't have Joey Bosa on the other side, but again, Stanford product, going back to the area where he played in college. Hopefully he puts on a show if you are starting him. Certainly in 2 quarterback and super flex leagues, he is definitely in the conversation as a must-start.